Okay, welcome to First Impressions, the podcast where we talk about our love for Jane Austen and all things related to Jane Austen and give a big middle finger to all the haters. I'm Kristen and I'm joined by Maggie.
Hi.
And we are joined today by Priya, our friend Priya, our IRL friend Priya, who you may remember as being Constantia on our Regency Daze episodes of the podcast. Welcome, Priya.
Hey, it's so nice to see you all.
In person, Priya and I are together in the same room. So exciting. She's spitting all over my microphone. It makes me really uncomfortable. No, I'm kidding. We're sitting a reasonable distance away.
I'll keep my eye on you.
Oh my God. Like I came in here thinking it would be nice, but no, this is podcasting's a battle. Everything's great. We're so happy to have her join us this week.
Yes, our resident Bridgerton expert, because she has read all the books.
That makes her an expert.
Compared to us anyway.
Yeah.
Priya, are you excited to talk about Bridgerton? Like you were specifically very I would love to come on the podcast to do this.
Oh yeah. Maggie and I were taking a walk, I think sometime in the middle of the pandemic. And I was like, I would love to talk about this.
Yeah. She was like, basically, she said, let me clarify. She said, you better not do a Bridgerton episode without me. And I was like, oh, okay, damn. Well,
yeah. And I will caveat by saying this is exactly, I'm only an expert by way of having read all the books, but also because it brought me a lot of joy during the pandemic, that and romance reading, where I couldn't get my brain in shape to read anything but romance. And a lot of it was Regency and Georgian and Victorian era, thanks to my friend Diana. She gave me all sorts of recommendations. So I just read a lot. Again, not the expert, but I know a lot.
Now, remind me. So Bridgerton came out on Christmas Day, but it was 2019. Is that right? Or was it 2020? I can't even remember. Time has no meaning.
Christmas 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a year.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Because it came out the same day as Wonder Woman 1984. And I spent Christmas Day eating chocolate and watching TV, being very pregnant.
It was a very good day.
It was a good day. Yeah.
TV and movies. I was like, the same day, what am I going to do? But the key was avoiding family, right? My family was they're like, you're not going to spend time with us?
No, you're a disease vector. Get away from me. Yeah. I'm just kidding. We love our families. So Christmas 2020, it had been 10 months of lockdown, pandemic. The world was crying out.
Yeah.
Regency romance.
And this was was very of the moment. Like it hit everybody's craving. Like everybody watched it in a day. And but Priya, give me a timeline here. So you read the Julia Quinn Whistledown series, right? Bridgerton series before the show came out?
Yeah. So I think February, March, when lockdown started, I think is when I first read them, or I might have read them a little bit earlier in 2019. Actually can't remember, but it wasn't that long before. It was, you know what? It was actually before they made the announcement that the show was happening. So it definitely might have been 2019 because I don't think we found out until 2019 that they were doing it. But it wasn't that much before the announcement of the show.
So you liked it before it was cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So you read it, you're like, I love these. And then the magical thing happens in our lives where you realize they're going to make a show or they're going to make a movie out of this beloved thing.
Yeah.
And overall, so I know you were excited when you heard the announcement. When you watched the show, did it fulfill your every expectation of that you had from the books? Were you just thrilled with it, or did you have reservations?
Yeah, because the books were written in the 90s, so they're about 20 years old. So I was prepared for lots of change to happen. And also the world is very different from when Julia Quinn wrote them in whenever that was, 1994 or something like that. And so I knew when the show was going to come out that they were going to make some changes. And the fact that Shonda Rhimes' production company, and I guess Chris Van Dusen was going to be the showrunner, I knew that they were going to take, I don't know, liberties is the right word, but they were going to do what they needed to do to tell a particular perspective.
A more modern
interpretation on the books. And I was all there for it. And the minute casting dropped, I was like, oh yeah. This is something I'm way into because I'm really interested in making sure we're being representative and in all of our pop culture.
I was so glad, that people got joy out of it. I think it's a good point, though, to bring up that the books were written a way long time ago. I remember
first of all, the 1990s were not a way long time ago. Fuck you very much.
I'm not that old,
Kristen.
I should clarify. I did mean culturally, not like time.
Yes, that
It's
is
the crow
correct.
flies time, because obviously there is a something that happens in this season that when I read, that thing does also happen in the first book, right? The Duke and I, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Julia
yeah,
Quinn's The Duke and I had read that book and only that book before the season came out, or the series came out. I read it, and at that part, I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, how the hell did she get away with this? Like, and that's when I turned to the copyright page and I looked at the date that it was written, because I was so shocked that this was still like a romance book that people were like invested in reading, when it's it's a clear violation of consent is what happens, right?
Well, let's clarify first our spoiler policy in this discussion. So anything in the Bridgerton TV show, fair game for our discussion. So if you, for some reason, haven't managed to make it through the first season and you don't want to be spoiled, this may not be the episode for you. And Priya has promised not to drop any bombs about future books. And she might mention things that are kind of like, oh, the show is setting up something with this character, but she's promised not to give us any future spoilers.
Spoiler-free zone, because I don't want to ruin it for myself either.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know what happens, but as well, we'll talk about with the show, they set up things and change things. And so I don't even know what's going to happen in the show.
Right. So also, because we're not concerned with spoilers of things that have aired, I think we can just say explicitly what you're referencing, Kristen.
Yes.
Which is the Daphne character does not allow her husband to... Okay, first of all, I never thought that pulling out would like be a major plot point
in a romance novel.
No, I'm just like a Regency show. But yes, like he told her he couldn't have kids. Every time they have sex, he pulls out before he ejaculates, and she does not allow him to. I think in the book, doesn't she get him drunk? She kind of does that.
Yeah.
Here.
So I think I just read that section in the book, and I've already lost some of the details. But I think in the book, they have the conversation about his father and why he doesn't want kids, after she realizes what he's doing is stopping her from getting pregnant.
And then he does it.
I think, is already wasted. And then she does it.
That's
and I
even
think
worse.
That's the really problematic part about the book. Whereas in the show, she's just mad.
Because he lied to her.
He lied to her, but she doesn't understand his father until the last episode. And she just makes this decision that you can tell she regrets later. But that's the one thing I do wish they did, is they purposely changed it to make it work better in the show and make it less of like an assault, even though it's still assault in the show. But they don't show her remorse in a very overt way. And he doesn't get angry at her in the way he does in the book and leave her for weeks.
Wow.
He still follows her to London. They still go to London together in the show. And so there's some distinctions that they made that I still wish they could have gone a step further in talking about the idea of consent. And they tried to address that from the fact that she was ignorant about sex.
Let's get into
I thought it, and I don't want to say it worked well. This sexual assault worked well. Both of the characters had motivations and had kept information from each other. And Daphne, like, this bitch didn't even know what sex was. Like, Did we talk about this, Kristen, about like how realistic that is for the time period?
Let's get into this. Yes, let's dig into the Duke and Daphne, right? So that's one thing that like definitely you pinged on and that we were talking about afterwards. So as the relationship is set up, if you haven't seen the show, what are you doing with your life, right? I'm going to assume everybody basically has an idea, but they set up this fake courtship. And then such an amazing thing, because they're able to do this Regency stuff, but they're also doing Shonda Rhimes style show. Sex is there, and it's there much more explicitly than this is not this historically accurate, and historical accuracy is so far out the side window. Like we don't even need to talk about it anymore. So, but we're still in a pretend world where I don't know. I've been back and forth with myself. Is it plausible that they would not know about ejaculate, about semen, like about how babies are made? And I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't know, man. They are very, very sheltered girls. But as Benedict says to Eloise, or, one of them says to Eloise, have you ever been on a farm?
Yeah, did you see the dogs in the yard?
Because sex was all around them in, you know, in the Regency England world, right?
They're not like they were all sharing a room so everybody knew what mom and dad were up to make 9 kids. But
yeah,
I can't believe.
But servants, you know, the kids were around so many different people from so many different
3
classes.
older brothers.
Yes, and kids hear things, right? They are smart. They ask and they listen, but the information choke points, like we forget even before the internet how hard it was to see a picture of a naked person.
It was
right. Like,
I will say that as someone who's pretty sheltered, like I'm South Asian and my parents didn't really talk about sex or anything like that. And I don't know where I got my information except for sex ed.
Probably fourth grade health
class. And I know my mom talked to me about periods and shit like that, but like, for me, it was a little plausible because there's a level of ignorance if you're naive and not really understanding how you're feeling to not actually know what's going on. I will say in the book, Daphne does say at one point, I have 3 brothers. I know what's going on. But there's a difference between knowing and understanding.
Like, I know that there's parts that go together. Like not knowing the actual physical, like the biological stuff. And what also happens.
And I wish I'd looked this up as a historian, but like how much about like processes did women know at that time?
Yeah, like the egg leaves the...
And I'm sure, and I'm sure this was discussed. How much did the medical field know at that time about the cycle and all that stuff? And so maybe after this, I'll see if I can find some sources and you guys...
we can share. Hey guys, if you're wondering about Regency medical knowledge.
The unfortunate side effect of us, like whether we think it's believable or not, we have to accept in the story that Daphne does not know what sex is, right? And the unfortunate side effect of that is that her mother looks like a really terrible parent. At some point, every kid asks their parents, where do babies come from?
Yeah.
And so what did she tell her? Probably some bullshit. And then even the night before her wedding, this girl is, how old is she when they get married? 18, 19, whatever.
Like that.
She explicitly said what happens and her mom punts. And it's just like...
She's like, can't talk about it. And it's weird because it's clear that Violet loves having sex. She's like, yeah, it's so great. It's so natural. It's so wonderful, but she can't talk about it, which seems natural too. I mean, you're right that health class really is rare now that you say that, where that more specific information comes from. After thinking about it, I think I can buy it. But what made me wince is that then she's having a conversation with her housekeeper in this very Rebecca-like scenario where she's the new Duchess. She's at Cliveden. There's this housekeeper who kind of doesn't like her because she's new. And they're having tea. And she's like talking about strong, healthy seed.
Yeah.
And Daphne's just there like, tell me more. Like it was just the worst situation to put your daughter in. And so I bought it. I actually bought it more the second time around what was happening. And so, so that's going on with Daphne and the Duke. And he says to her in this scene, which made me scream out loud, shrieks of joy and laughter and horror, right? When they're still courting, she's asking him something like she's like trying to get at what happens between a man and a woman when they're in love or whatever. And he's like, oh, when you touch yourself, what at night when you're alone, when you touch yourself. And I was like shrieking. I was like, this is the most awkward conversation I could possibly imagine.
The guy you're fake dating talking about what masturbation is.
But that's what let me just like aside about romance novels. That's what they're so good at, is creating these situations which are just plausible enough that like sex is coming into it in a weird, wacky way. So like we're engaging with sex in a different scenario than we normally would, of like, let's go out, see a movie, eat some popcorn and, like have a date and have sex with each other. And we're trying to come at it from all these different ways. How can we make sex new again? How can we have questions about sex again? Yeah. And that's what I think is so like refreshing about romance novels. And I was very uninitiated with the romance novel when I read, I'm sorry to bring it up, 50 Shades of Grey. But when E.L. James sets this up, right, and she has Anna Steele there, and then Anna Steele's getting drawn into Christian Grey's orbit, and then she has this line like, oh, I'm a virgin. I like howled and I was like, she's a genius to Kevin. Like, it's like, this is the most ridiculous scenario, the most ridiculous ingredients of a new sex question. And I am so here for it. Like, what is going to happen? And I didn't read no romance or erotica up until that point. So don't laugh at me too hard, but.
No, I mean, it's okay. I'm definitely, like I said, I read them, started reading them a couple of years ago, but I really got into them in the last year or so. And I mean, they're fantasy. Like everyone who's like, and this might be a whole other conversation, but everyone who's like, this is not Jane Austen. I'm like, yeah, it's not Jane Austen.
I don't want to read a Jane Austen book right now. I want to read a romance.
Romance novels are made to be female centered. And also they're well, actually males read them too. Yeah. So not to put things in buckets, but
well, we'll say female protagonists usually.
Yeah. And they're meant to make you feel good and like talk about love and sex in a lot of ways that you won't get anywhere else. And so many of my friends said the first time they learned about sex was through a romance novel because they couldn't get that information anywhere else. Yeah, it's not accurate all the time or most of the time, but it is a genre that has a purpose. And when you turn on the TV to watch Bridgerton, that's exactly what you're getting is fantasy.
Well, talking about it having a purpose, I mean, look, if you want to watch most pornography, almost all pornography is made for the male gaze. Women are objectified. That is fantasy sex too, but usually women do not come out on the good end of it. Like they are objectified. They don't have any power. And so usually, because some romance novels are messed up, you turn that on its head when you have the female gaze and a female audience. I read my first romance novel when I was 15. I got it from the library. My brother saw me reading it and told my mom, and she took it away.
Oh my God.
I know. What the fuck? I had not read the Bridgerton novels before I watched the show. And I remember thinking, I thought this was a romance. Like, when do they have sex? And then it got to episode 4. And I was like, oh, okay, there it
is. Here's the thing too, that is so interesting. I think like what lays women open to like being, I don't know, laughed at or teased about Bridgerton, because I watched it with Kevin. It was really awkward. And he made a shit ton of fun of me, is because
Bae loved it.
That's so amazing. I love Bae. He's so
and
great.
I watched some of it with my mom.
Nice.
We started it with my mother, and then I watched ahead, and I was like, nope. Can't do it.
Looking at it from just me on the couch watching these people have sex, it's like, it's softcore pornography, right? And he's kind of like, I know what you're doing here, respectably binging a Netflix series. You're watching porn. You're watching your version of porn. And I'm like, it's a very different way that we engage with sex and what we like about sex, because there are a lot of, not all men, not everybody, right? But some people can watch a 5-minute video of just the sex act. And that is interesting and, gets them aroused. Sorry, that's such a gross word to use. It gets them engaged. Let me just say that. But for me, that means nothing to me. It's like an action movie that starts with the fighting, but you don't know who anyone is. So you don't care. You're not
like a nature video.
I have to know. It's like, sure, they're having sex, but how are they feeling inside? How are they feeling? What are they thinking? And that's the sexy part. And I don't know why, but it is. And so like, that's what story has to give you an engine to care about two people coming together. And that's just a very human interest, right?
100%. The best romance novels that I love are the ones that have a really strong character development, a really strong storyline. You actually care about the people where stuff is happening to them. The reason I like the Bridgerton series is because it's a family. You have 8 people that you get to follow their lives throughout time. And I don't know, it just makes me a lot more engaged. And those are the romance novels I tend to go back and forth to, are the ones that are about like a group of people who are friends or family and their lives are intertwined and how they all connect. Like my favorite authors are the ones who do that. So
what Priya is saying is that Bridgerton is the Fast and Furious of the romance genre, because it's all right? It's just about family, you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say that is a trope across the genre. There are a lot of different series that do
this more generations.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, because we've talked a lot about sex, the other and women's education, the other thing that I thought was really interesting that the show did was talk about like you saw Daphne getting her period.
Yeah.
Which was, you know, I've never seen that happen on a show in that way before. And I thought
we've all had that look, by the way, where she's at the opera and she just gets that, oh shit, look, and like runs out. I'm like, that is real.
Yeah. And I think I really appreciated that about the show, where they're like, if we're going to spend all this time talking about men's bodies and how babies are made, we also have to talk about what happens to women. And I thought, obviously they can't go into it that much in an 8-episode show where that has to do a lot of things, but I did appreciate the time they gave to that.
Priya, I completely agree that it's so important to get invested in the family, and you really, really do. I think Julia Quinn has created so many distinct personalities in the family that makes it realistic and gets you invested. Do you want to talk a little bit about the family and the casting and the performances and just give your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I did just reskim the book to sort of remember how they were portrayed in the book versus how they were portrayed in the show. And I think there's a little bit more of like an edge in the show because they have to create drama in a different way than you do because it's different media. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I really love they did with the casting was they got people who were really good at making them like each other. So the scenes in the family house where they're all like bantering, all like the dinner table one is great. I love the Hyacinth and Gregory are there. And then there's a scene they took out of the book that I was a little sad about where they're on a boat. They're going on a boat and Gregory, I think, accidentally pushes Simon into the water. And that sort of like energy of like they're a family that love each other, but they goof off with each other is I really like how they carry that forward into the show. And so the casting was great. All the boys are beautiful. All the girls are lovely. But come on, Eloise is perfection.
Eloise is so amazing.
I love it. Jessie is so great. The woman, Nicola Coughlan, I think is how you say her name, who they picked for Penn, is amazing.
Oh my God.
The two of them together. When they did the previews for this show and they let you see like some scenes early, they talked about the hashtag Louise. And I was like, good for you for making that hashtag because they're my favorite two in the entire. I love them so much in the series. So that was really great.
And that makes me want to give a shout out to the costume designer. There's been some flack from people who are into historical clothing and fashion about how it's not historically accurate. But like we were saying, this is a fantasy world. And I thought the costumes in this were so great at distinguishing characters, how you can immediately tell the families apart. Because there's a lot of characters, right? Yeah. But you can tell who's in one family just based on what color they're wearing. And everything in the Bridgerton house is that pale blue, right? It's all this like calming, icy blue color. And I love Eloise's dresses versus Daphne's dresses. You can tell all the sisters apart. I will admit, I find the brothers difficult to tell apart. They're just all tall, white, brown-haired dudes.
Really Benedict and Anthony. It took me a little while, but I've not watched.
Colin has like the crazy younger brother hair.
Yeah. His face shape's also a little bit different. But I will say by like the 4th episode, I was okay. It was just the first one that I was just like, okay.
I'm a little face blind for like blandly handsome white men. To be completely honest. No, this happens all the time in movies. They get mad at me because I'll be like, now who is that again? And like, how can you not tell like Tom Hardy from, I don't know, that guy from Avatar. I'm like, everyone looks the same.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we're talking a lot about the Bridgerton family, but I will say that the thing that I really loved about this adaptation was the color intentional casting.
Yes.
Regé-Jean Page.
Let's get into
brilliant.
It. So fucking hot.
Forget that he's hot. He's
no.
really good. He is hot. But he's really he pulls off.
Yes, he's very good.
Simon so well, like that brooding person. And in the book, his stutter and everything is a little bit more of a problem for him because you get what's in his head every single time he tries to talk. But I think if you watch Regé-Jean Page's face, every single time he talks, you can kind of see that deliberate, like, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say before I say it, before so I can actually say it.
To bring it back to Jane Austen, this is just like, now we're not huge fans of the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, but I mentioned that I like Matthew McFadden's performance, because you can see Darcy thinking and then being like, oh God, I have to say something. Like, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
And it's that same kind of, you could see the wheels turning behind the eyes, that it's a thoughtful performance.
Yeah.
Talking about the character of Simon, I thought Bay pretty much nailed it, where he said with his whole thing, like, I don't want to have kids. The line needs to die with me. And I was saying, this is dumb. And Bay said, listen, this is one of the most accurate portrayals of a male mindset. I would rather blow up my own life just to fuck at someone who's dead than be happy. You can argue with that.
Right. Since we are talking about, go ahead, Priya.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that, like, with that mindset, and then also how they linked it into the fact that in the show, the Hastings line was given to them as British Black people, and that they have to honor it and they have to be perfect.
That choice upped the stakes so much.
That especially in the era we live in now, we hear a lot of that, is that if you're a person of color, you're expected to be
exceptional,
higher standard, exceptional, and you are not allowed to have flaws. And that conversation about perfection is a little bit more overt in the book, but it still carries through on the show. Like his obsession with, like, I'm just going to stick it to my father because he was so obsessed with perfection. I don't want it. I don't want it.
So I have to say this. I completely agree that element of race was used so well to up the stakes so high. A lot of times in books, like, a villain is just a bad person, like so villainous. And it's like, why are you such an asshole? And that gave Hastings, the first Hastings, the Duke's father, a reason for being a true asshole to his child. He was under tremendous pressure. He felt like
just given, just elevated to the status.
And we have to maintain it. Now I have a child but let me tell you where the show really let me down, and probably let anybody who has a speech fluency disorder or who knows someone with a speech fluency disorder down. I feel like I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this online, but when you know someone who actually has a stutter, like if you know them and you interact with them and you see what they go through, it's not just like as it was portrayed. Like, that was an adorable little kid who's like, well, it's like, no, it's like, that is not what stuttering is like. I had a friend in college who had a stutter, and you can see all the muscles working. You can hear clicking. You can see a physical struggle, and it is so painful. And I was just really let down, because one of the things I loved about the book is that you very much you did see inside Simon's head, and you did know that it was an ongoing thing, that he was always afraid that he had to change words, right? Just like someone was saying, like Joe Biden has to do, like when you see him talk, he makes a different word selection sometimes because he's about to stutter. It definitely was a letdown in that, like, oh, you just have a cute little kid who doesn't say anything, versus you have someone who's physically fighting. And that aspect wasn't really emphasized. And so I thought it was a missed opportunity. And I know if I was a stutterer, I would be pretty disappointed.
Where he just kind of got over it.
Yeah. And even in the scene we were talking about with Daphne's violation, he kind of says Daff a couple of times, and you're supposed to say, oh, he's stuttering. I like missed that on the first view because it had been so de-emphasized in his adult life. But in other ways, they did bring the struggle back. Certainly when Daphne reads the letters that he written as a child, and you can like feel his pain that way. And I loved Lady Danbury, which also redeemed that storyline, when she comes in and she says, you can speak. And it's such a so powerful performance that redeemed it for me too. But I just wanted to add that little thing. It's like a little bit of missed opportunity there.
And that's actually really interesting, because we were just talking about how I thought when we watched Regency Daze do that I could see in his head as he did that. But that physical part of it, that physical pain about talking that you're discussing, wasn't quite there. I thought I saw the mental, but not the physical.
And you make a good point about the mental. I never thought about it, but he is. And if you saw it like that, you can see the wheels turning, then that makes it better too for me. And he is a good actor. I mean, he's just fantastic. He blew me away with his performance.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why the internet exploded when they didn't realize he was coming back.
This is kind of why I took the job. I have a question for you two. So this is definitely in the romance genre. I know the score. I know what makes for a happy ending. But I was also a little disappointed, I guess, that Simon's story ends with him getting married and having children when that was not something that he wanted. Whether we agree with his reasons or not, as an outsider with this character, he had decided he did not want children. And he married Daphne anyway because of reasons, and she definitely wanted children. But as someone who firmly believes that you do not have to get married to be happy, you do not have to have children to be happy, I was just a little kind of like, oh, well, we had a depiction of a character who, you know, didn't want to have kids, and that was what he decided, and that was how his life was going to go. And then it just ended with him having, like, you know, the family and the wife and the kids, and he was happy.
Yeah, and I will say in the book, I think they do a better job of walking him through that decision transformation, which you don't get quite the screen time for it. They frame it as sort of like, by preventing yourself from living a full life to basically fuck you to your father.
Yeah.
You are harming yourself.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how the show approached him, changing his mind and showing him like the joy he got from being around Gregory.
And he had never had a family. So when he did see,
And so, but yeah, no, I agree. I think that is the challenge. What I do appreciate, the way I approach it, is that so often we want our heroes and our heroines to be firm and resolute and determined and know exactly what they want. But life isn't like that. Sometimes you change your mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes you really know what you want. And if your reasons are like, I don't want to have kids.
Yeah.
Then they are, I don't want to have kids. But his reasoning was always not a decision for himself. It was a decision because of how somebody else.
All right, you convinced me. You convinced me.
But you're
right.
No less valid.
Well, and it's not even like I hated it. I just felt a little twinge of like, oh, it would have been nice. I will say this though, I have not read ahead with books. I will be disappointed if Eloise ends up goes, oh, I'm getting married. I'm like having kids. Ooh.
Oh,
Well, we can't talk about
I
it.
know, but like so that is
Story
someone that is different perspective than Simon had.
Yeah,
I think
we said
she
it-
wants to like do something else. And I appreciate that. So I'm hoping that we'll see that.
Yeah, and we'll see what they change. I will say there is some foreshadowing in the show for Eloise. You guys won't know it, but if you've read the books, you know what the foreshadowing is, which is what's very fascinating about choices they made for characters they brought on and implications for other characters. And so I am really interested to see how that plays out. I'm not even going to name the characters because I think that would be like,
That's
that
exciting.
would be tough. But I just did want to say one more thing about the color intentional casting. And I think if you're interested in knowing more about it, I would look up some of the conversations about colorism with the show. And it came up a lot with In the Heights too recently about, you know, you can be color intentional but still have biases. And I think it's always good to educate yourself and know a little bit more about that even a show that I thought was as good with this as Bridgerton still had some things to think about. Just worth looking up. There's some really great podcasts out there and stuff that talk about it.
yeah, for sure. And even, and Maggie, I think you mentioned the previous podcast, but in A Fake Fantasy Britain, it was very cogently and well done with what happened with Queen Charlotte and, you know, her being Black and then other people, as the story says, being given the titles of nobility. But India, there's also this relationship with India that is historical that could be treated exactly the same way. And I don't remember seeing more than one or two like East Asian people in the entire cast. And so hopefully we'll see more.
Yeah.
Some of the big ball scenes and things like that.
Yeah.
And sorry, Kristen, South Asian. East Asian is...
Oh, I'm just sorry. Sorry.
But
South Asian.
I don't think this is a spoiler, but they cast South Asian women for the leads for season 2.
Ooh.
I love Kate so much. I love the heroine for season 2 so much. And so the fact that she is brown.
Oh, I'm so excited. I didn't know that. I hadn't seen this casting.
Okay.
Which I think it's Sheffield in the book, but her name is Kate Sharma in the book.
So this will have something to do with Anthony, right? Because he kind of takes the
Anthony is the lead in the next one.
Okay.
And that's actually really cool because the stuff with Anthony that happened in the first one, we don't get in the book because the book is very Daphne Simon centric.
Right.
And Anthony's there as like her father figure who like has to manage the suitors and all that stuff. But they set his perception of love up in a way that we don't get.
Right.
Like we just walk into book 2 and that's just how we live.
This is what I feel like this is one of the things you have to do in a TV show adaptation. And you'll see it happen in other things like Game of Thrones, where you're drawing from kind of a rich series where in the season, they have to fill that airtime. And so you start drawing those threads from later things and planting those seeds and maybe getting things started subplot wise earlier than you would in the novels. Because in a show, you have to have your A plot, B plot, C plot kind of per episode, right? So what do you can't just watch Simon and Daphne every single scene. Like that's super boring. So I really appreciated that. And I actually appreciated the time they spent on characters. You know, speaking of Queen Charlotte, when you first see her, you think, oh, well, she's just like kind of a bitch. Like she's a queen, she's spoiled, she's rich. And then you get scenes with her and the king and the heartbreak they had with the loss of their daughter. And there's just they just add dimensions to even like tertiary characters that I really appreciated.
Yeah, and I think, Krista, I like that you brought up colonialism, because that is, I'm wondering how much of that they're going to bring into season 2, because it is a little bit absent in here. Because, you know, Queen Charlotte's a tricky figure in that some historians say she did have Black heritage. Some historians say she doesn't. And then there are people who have appropriated her as a figure in the monarchy who is Black, when at the same time she is still part of a system that had enslaved people, that colonized countries all along the world, and she's one of the head people in that system. And so in real life it's a little bit trickier, but that's the thing that TV does, and it gives you an interest, and then you can read into it and like stuff like that, even though this is fantasy. So
based on season 1's directly addressing people of color's status, I would be shocked if we have cast Indian actors for season 2 with large roles if it is not addressed. And honestly, Shonda Rhimes is one of those showrunners where I've learned that there's a certain level of trust I have when I hear her name attached to it. If it was someone like Ryan Murphy, I'd be like, well, who the fuck knows? It could be anything. But with Shonda Rhimes, it's like she knows what she's doing. She has a clear statement that she makes with her shows. Yeah. So and this makes me more excited for season 2.
Yeah. And I want to see who they bring on as writers, because that's always, it's always part of the conversation, is that like, if your leads are South Asian, you should
who's behind the scenes.
Yeah, who's behind the scenes. You should have a South Asian or two behind the scenes. Just like we talk about like The Handmaid's Tale and the number of women writing and directing, and like how you can sometimes tell when it's a male director versus a non.
Well, this is a tangent, but this is the big problem people have with that new Netflix movie. What is it called? Like Gunpowder Milkshake or something like that? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? This is a new movie on Netflix where it's it's an action movie, and it's all female people. It's like the female John Wick is what people are saying. But the writers, the directors, the producers, everyone's a man. And so every review I've read is like, well, this movie's pretty shitty, because like it's clear that nobody actually cares about having a movie with women in it. They just wrote a movie and put women in it, and it was like, here you go. Yeah. But I don't feel like that's what's happening here. This is very, like you were saying, color intentional casting. I really love that. But I haven't heard that phrase, and I love it. It's perfect.
I thought you're right with saying like trust. Like the Queen Charlotte thing with King George. You know, King George is mad, right?
I love that
to use the historian. Is that James Fleet playing King George?
But he was in The Vicar of Dibley.
It's James Fleet. Yeah. He's great. I was excited to see him. It's a beautiful grace note in the show that you just think Queen Charlotte is a bitch, and then she gets this dimension where she's happy to see George lucid, and they have this conversation that shows they were great friends, and then he goes back behind the veil, right? And it's just the emphasis of the show is the warmth of friendships and the warmth of family that draws you in. You're not just watching, the Duke and Daphne, you're watching everybody. And I also wanted to make sure before we get too far to talk about the Featheringtons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Polly Walker.
I know, she's incredible.
Jane Fairfax. That was actually when I first saw the pictures from the cast and stuff like that, when I saw Polly Walker was in it. Because if you've seen HBO's Rome, I think she's so incredible in that. I was so excited.
I totally forgot she was in Rome. And
oh my God, she's my favorite character. She is Bay's least favorite character, but she's my favorite character. I don't know if that says anything about us.
Is she Brutus's wife?
No, she is Caesar's niece. And she is always kind of like angling to get her kid. So she is the mother of who becomes Caesar Augustus.
Oh, right.
Octavian.
Yes.
And she's always like trying to get the family, angling to get them power and stuff. But her plans are very small, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like she's not operating on the same level of political like acumen that people around her. So she's worried about like who is so-and-so going to marry. And Caesar's like, I'm worried about what country I'm going to next to take over. Anyway, I think she's fantastic. And that role is perfect for her because not the same, but there's a lot of kind of similar, that's how you get power in the world that they occupy. And so that is her primary concern. And then of course, when she finds out the truth about her husband, how he's gambled their money, it's incredible to see her be faced with real obstacle, right? Not just like, oh, well, who am I getting my daughters to marry? Like our family could fall apart.
Yeah. And again, that's actually the interesting thing about that storyline is her husband's dead in the book.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier
he's dead,
to me.
Like in the beginning, he's been dead for 3 years in the book when it starts. And so there's also conversation about like, there's no way she wouldn't know who his heir is.
Oh, but what a fun cliffhanger.
Like at the end, you're like, there's no way she would be like, I don't know who's going to support us up. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Really? But yes, you're right. It's for dramatic effect. It's great. But
okay, I'm going to ask Priya for a hint of something. So if you don't want to like hit the 15-second fast forward button, have we met the character that is inheriting the money?
I don't even think we know who it is in The Duke and I.
Oh, in Shonda's world. So like you're saying.
Shonda's world, yeah.
But you know from the other books, right?
I don't.
Do you remember?
No, I don't actually remember.
Okay, that's fine.
So
Okay, never mind. No spoilers. We're just
so I think this is really like an opening for them to bring someone else in.
That's what I was thinking. It's either a great hook for a new character or it's a huge twist.
Yeah.
Relationship we don't know about between other characters.
But I mean, to bring it back to the Featheringtons and friendship, I think they layer that in a lot of ways within the Featherington household, because obviously the two older sisters have this sort of like Gab connection that Penn is sort of separate.
Well, they have a mean girl.
Yeah.
That Penn is sort of separate from, but then there's also Penn and Marina that shifts and changes throughout the episode. And I'm going to do a slight tangent and then we'll come back, is in the book, Daphne is out already for a full year and everyone she meets thinks of her as her friend and not a romantic interest. And she finds that to be the struggle and the reason she's not
friend zoned.
She's friend zoned with everyone. And then it's just kind of sweet about how Simon and her end up becoming friends and then realize they love each other. Yeah. And which they carry through in the show itself with Queen Charlotte, where Queen Charlotte says, yes, the best relationships are the ones that start out as friendships. Right. And then
but in the show, it's more like Anthony drives away, like actual prospects. Well, yeah,
and Anthony in the book is a little bit more like he listens to his sister, where he's like, yeah, he lets her make the decision, but I'm the one who has to tell them.
Well, we have to make that drama, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the Featheringtons. I really appreciated the evolution of Penn and Marina's relationship throughout the show.
It was fascinatingly done. I mean, there were so many, they come together and there's you can tell Penn is a real friend and a real support. And then as soon as her interests, right, and her love of Colin, they're at cross purposes. It's so fascinating to see her try to stay to an ideal of what a good person would do and how a good person would treat their friend, and yet save the man she loves from being manipulated. And I think she's in a really untenable position, but I know that everybody feels differently about that particular situation.
She outs Marina as pregnant, obviously, in the Whistledown paper. That is, I'm trying to remember, I think that's the only time she actually, and maybe she would disagree with this characterization, but I think that's the only time she weaponizes Lady Whistledown. She definitely uses it to shit on her own family because they're so mean to her. But I think it's the only time she really just uses, and she would say, I'm trying to protect Colin, right?
Yeah.
I don't want him, but she really does weaponize the power she has with it.
Yeah. And it's almost like she has a philosophy as Lady Whistledown that there's a line I will not cross. One, because it will out me.
Yeah.
And this is a line that she crossed, because that's her conversation with Eloise is after that happens. Eloise is like, who else knew about this? It narrows the world of who Lady Whistledown is. And at that point, we don't know that Penn is Lady Whistledown.
I was still shocked by the reveal.
Yeah. And we don't find out about that until the middle of the series. And so the fact that they revealed it so early, I think, is going to add a very, very interesting layer to this thing. But
I was shocked.
But yeah, I don't know how I feel. Like, I see why she put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
she tried talking to him, and Marina kept stopping her. So I don't know. The Bridgerton raises a lot of interesting ethical questions, you guys.
It was so hard because I wanted to be on Penn's side. I did. And I watched it again. I went back through. It's like, okay, now she tells Colin what's up, person to person. Like, Marina's heart has gone to another, which isn't the ultimate betrayal, but it's fair to Colin, so that he knows that. And that doesn't dissuade him. And then she has the final confrontation with Marina where she's like, you cannot do this. And Marina is like, oh, you're in love with Colin and I'm still going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And even with all of her good faith trying, it wasn't enough. And when Marina said that to her, like, I think I know more of the world than you. I'm going to do what I need to do. I definitely felt that that anger at Marina, but you still know when you look back that Penn has ultimately outed Marina as pregnant for her own selfish reasons.
Yeah.
She tried to do it in the right, honorable way. She couldn't get anyone to listen. She couldn't get anyone to care. And it's devastating when she lobs that bomb. And of course, when you watch at the time, you don't know she's Lady Whistledown, so you're not mad at her. And then in the very last episode, when it's revealed that she's Lady Whistledown, you're like, wait,
Like,
I have to change how I feel about all of this stuff that happened. How do I feel about Penn? You kind of get the sense that she might have tipped off Lady Whistledown, though, so that I was already kind of percolating, like, well, what if she was the person who did this? How do I feel about this? And I don't think there's any easy answer, because I do think that Colin, has a say and a right in this, but no more than any other normal person. He doesn't need help from on high. He doesn't need, like people tipping his fiance's hand. I don't know.
What's interesting is that all three of them, I see the motivations and I feel sympathy for all three of them. Like Marina, she tells her, like, what other option do I have?
Yeah.
I'm sorry you love Colin, but there is literally no other option I have that doesn't end up with me, penniless, in the gutter, being ostracized from society.
And I will say this whole storyline was fascinating because it's not in the book at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Marina is a character who exists in this world.
And that's all I can say.
But that is all I can say. Like, you just don't learn about her in quite the same way we did in the show this season.
Interesting.
It's, again, foreshadowing.
Right.
And I am going to be really interested to see if the same things happen to her that we know happened to her from later books. Yeah, I can't say anymore. It's just going to be really interesting if they follow through on that storyline, because there's ramifications elsewhere. And but there's also another element to the story that I thought was really interesting was Daphne's own reflection, because there's conversations about women's roles, women's power, communication, people keeping people in the dark, and like you not having any options to make choices for yourself. So then you choose the best option you can at the time. And so like Daphne making a judgment about Marina when she comes home to help with the Colin situation after everything blows up. And she watches Marina's face when Colin and her have that confrontation. And she's like, oh, she's kind of in the same situation I was, where like I trusted someone and then that trust was lost.
Right.
And then she's like, so how can I, as a duchess, as a woman with power now, how can I make this better? And I really appreciated that that's how they brought Daphne really settling into her role as a duchess, how they made that work out. But also that there was that moment where Marina's like, oh, you wrote to the general, but you didn't put your husband's name on it. So it's even just that like lack of faith in female power in the show, and how magic it didn't matter because the guy answered and they found out that he was dead. And
that was sad.
It was really sad. And so I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm kind of rambling, but
I know. I remember when that happened, when the brother shows up and he's like, I will honor my brother's obligations, blah, blah, blah. And Marina's like, no, and walks away. I yelled at the TV. I was like, what are you doing, you stupid idiot? Even though she didn't think she was pregnant anymore, I say in quotations, because talk about not knowing how bodies work. I don't know. I could tell when I was pregnant, like, it's messed up, although apparently some people don't, which I find crazy. How disconnected are you from your body, right? And then she walked out and I'm like, this is the solution.
I was
everyone still knew she had
devastated. Well, because for so many episodes now, and this was the hardest plot for me because I was so anxious for her. I was every passing day, I was like, oh my God. And like, I was way overinvested. And honestly, it made the first watch of Bridgerton for me really unpleasant because that plot line got so stressful for me. And then when she walks away from that, I was just absolutely devastated. And of course, then she realizes she's still pregnant, that her tea didn't work. And I didn't think that guy was ever coming back. So I was like, you can't put me through this again, show. Like,
I
I've already.
Sir Philip.
He was adorable.
He was very cute, and I'm glad that he came back. And I loved that these Regency families are messed up. Love matches are not the norm. So she has this conversation with Lady Featherington where she's like, "You find things to love." And even though Lady Featherington was a huge bitch to her and lied to her with that faked letter at the end when she says, "You're strong," I felt that something. I felt that I was like, okay, these women are doing what they have to do. And Lady Featherington's telling Marina she's strong. But I wanted to quickly talk about power in the lower classes too, because we have two characters, Sienna, the opera singer, and Madame Delacroix, who have power, but in ways outside of society, right?
Power for the opera singer, for sure.
And with the modiste, right, with Madame Delacroix, right?
Where in France are you from?
And Marina gets the upper hand of her because she actually can speak French and knows it's a load of horseshit. She has power to manipulate the social scene by who she withholds fashions from, and she has all the gossip, right? To the point where you think she might actually be Lady Whistledown. But it's just that there's just a limit to how far they can go. Sienna has the beauty and she has the love of rich men and she has the money, but there's just limits of how far they can go. And ultimately, the Sienna and Anthony storyline, where he loves a woman of not his social class, broke my heart. It was very repetitive because they each kept breaking it off for exactly the same reason, which is never going to change. But that last time where he's like, "I'm going to take you to the ball." And then he shows up and she's it's devastating. She's crying. She's got snot on her nose. She's like, "I can't do this." And I was in tears. It's just,
I waved my chocolate at the TV and said, "Good for you, girl." Like, finally.
Right. It was just their options, like every other woman's options in the show, were just circumscribed. So even the rich women are circumscribed in different ways. So it's frustrating to watch. I guess that's why it was stressful to me and frustrating to me watch, is that all the problems stemmed out of the same problem, which is a fantasy historical Regency world, which is, I don't know, you might as well say, why are there so many vampires in Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Like, that's the point, right? That's the structure we're working in to create the drama.
One of my favorite scenes, speaking about like power and the lower classes, when Eloise is doing her not particularly great investigation and she goes and talks to the housekeeper.
Yeah. She's going through the housekeeper.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And she's like, "What are you doing in my room? Like, it's nothing private from you people." And then she tries to sass her and she says, "Are you maybe Lady Whistledown?" And the woman laughs in her face. What makes you think any of us have time? We're too busy cleaning up your shit. Like, literally, you were a baby and I wiped your butt. Like, get out of my room. I loved that.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I hope that they will explore the Featheringtons. I guess she's the housekeeper, or she's Lady Featherington's
lady's
maid. There's something about her that I wonder if we're going to explore some more, because the money was gone. She's the one who told her husband was dead. Like,
you're saying that she stole the money, maybe?
I don't know. I don't know if she stole it. I just think there's just something going on with that woman.
I hadn't even pinged on that.
Yeah, just whoever played her did a really exceptional job of like making there seem like there's a lot under the surface.
Interesting.
But yeah, the lower class stuff, it was equally interesting in the sense that how they were weaponized to find out more about Nigel, who in the book, Nigel is not, like, he still tries to get at Daphne, but in a less overt assaulting way.
Yeah.
And he's more of a bumbling idiot, but that's sort of par for the course sometimes.
And like malicious.
Yeah, malicious.
Yeah.
And she's a lot more like accepting, where Simon's like, "What the hell? How are you so blasé about this?" in the book. How they use the maids and the housekeeper to get information about Nigel.
To spread rumors.
Nigel and spread rumors and get it in their Lady Whistledown. I thought that was genius.
Yeah.
But also, like, they said the servants know everything.
It's true.
That, by the way, big eye roll to that plot point with Nigel Burbrick saying, "I will imply that I saw Daphne at the Dark Walk in Vauxhall Gardens and your entire family will be ruined forever. And it's like, oh, is that how that works?
You think people, but I mean, that guy, people know him. No one's going to believe.
I know. And the Duke was also there. He could say, I happened upon this asshole assaulting Daphne and I was there. Nothing happened. You know, like, I don't know. It was the weirdest plot that didn't make any sense. But, you know, you just buy in. You're like, okay, whatever. I'm into the drama. Right. I wanted to say, as far as supporting characters, like, just for people who don't know, like, the book obviously is just Simon and Daphne's story. All these other subplots are not happening. And so they were created and woven into the story in interesting ways. And one of the things that I thought was weird was the friendship, not weird, notable, Eloise and Benedict and their friendship and both of their desire to get into the underbelly of Regent society and not to stay on the glassy top, you know, the superficial top of the ton. Benedict, that story is so up in the air. It could go so many different ways.
I'm hoping it'll go more gay.
Yes, because at first you bring in this gay relationship, which is, all the books are M/F, right? Male-female romances, right? And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that. I think probably everyone in the romance world knows that's usually how stories go, right? If you're into one pairing, you're reading that author for that, or that series, that kind of pairing. So I thought that they were going to give him male romance.
You had a moment with that
with the guy, with the Sir Grenville guy, the portrait painter.
Boring.
And then he just sleeps with Madame Delacroix.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with that, and I hope that they do bring some, you know, some diversity to the sexuality that they're portraying here.
Kristen has the much more PC way of saying it. I'm like, yeah, make him gay. Do it.
Or at least bisexual, right?
I actually was wondering if they're, because again, it's a level of like ignorance and not understanding that things exist in a world where, you know, you've been sheltered. And so him learning that this is something that's possible, they had to sort of like ease him into it. And he could still be, he could still be bisexual.
He could still be bisexual. Yeah. The thing is, I was kind of happy to see that because I did, after watching the series, go back and read. Now I've read all of the first 4 books. And may I just say, without spoilers, that the 3rd book, which is about Benedict, right? We've got Daphne, we've got Antony, and then we've got Benedict. He is the most raging shit, like the most horrible. I wanted to reach through the pages and strangle this character. I hated his story so much. So, I mean, I'm just delighted that it's going to be anything different than what it was written by Julia Quinn, because
there are things that happen in that 3rd book that are just
extraordinarily fucked up. Just made me so angry with him. And so I'm trying. I'm
still more tempted to read it.
I will say the foreshadowing they did, which is what leads me to think that they might keep like the bones, but change it, is that conversation with the artist, the master painter, about the bravery of living outside society. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you make that choice for yourself for happiness is a very clear point for Benedict's story. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that.
Okay.
For Benedict's story later, is that sometimes you have to make choices that you wouldn't expect yourself to make in order to be happy.
Okay,
and so I'm hoping that they are leading us to the bones of the 3rd book, but not the actual specifics.
Like you said, there has to be trust.
Yeah.
I'm interested in checking that out. I hear a baby crying. It's getting close to nap time. He is very cute. Priya got to meet Alex.
I love babies.
He woke up from his nap when she was here. He was sleeping on his tummy with his ass up in the air. And then I go, wake up, baby. It's time to get up. And he looks over and he just goes, ah. It was very cute.
I have no children of my own, but I live vicariously through my nieces, my nephews, and other friends' babies.
That's the way to do it.
So much. little ears. But yeah,
it's like you watch these shows where, like, you know, the dinner table scenes, and they have all these like incredible interactions and stuff. And I think, oh, it would be so great actually to have more kids and like have Alex have siblings and have that energy. And I would really love that. But then I remember sitting up at 2 a.m. with this baby screaming in my face. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah, actually, I mean, sorry, just to bring up another baby related scene is that the conversation between Eloise and Daphne.
About how you could die.
Yeah, about their mom. And it was like a mere months after their father died. And which is definitely a big thing with Anthony in season 2. We will definitely see that because he's got problems. And so like, I just thought that scene was also really good about like Eloise being like, don't you find it hard? Like, even you are lying to yourself and playing a part. We know what happened to Mother.
Aren't you? And also, like, aren't you scared? Like, you could die having children. That was a reality. That happened all the time.
I will, like, I'm very excited that they've given it a multi-season renewal, which always is something I hate with shows when it's like fighting from season to season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the difference between network TV and Netflix, right? Yes. I mean, it apparently shattered records for them on viewership.
Yeah.
And internationally too. It's not just like it was a hit here. They got really good numbers all over the world.
And I really hope it opens the door for other adaptations. I have, so there are like authors I really love who start with characters of color in the book. So Courtney Milan, who's an incredible writer, but also an incredible human being. She's a lawyer. She's fought for women's rights within her own life. She's just like a amazing person, and she doesn't have extensive of a catalog as Julia Quinn, but like her latest book, her protagonist was, I believe, Chinese in a town that was filled with mostly Chinese people, and the Duke was also Chinese. Like, it just, and she made it fit within the Regency era and why it worked within that era and why it was possible, which it might have been. I actually haven't dug into it, and so I'm hoping that there are doors open for other authors to get adapted as well.
Well, it's just like with the Jane Austen adaptations, right? Assume if someone does one that's popular, then they redo adaptations of all the other novels. So maybe with
like a bunch of Mansfield Parks or something.
Yeah, well, this is the thing with the success of Bridgerton. Maybe we're going to see more, like you're saying, more of these other, not necessarily Regency, but maybe other historical romance. And I mean, Outlander is also hugely successful. That's definitely more kind of fantasy and sci-fi than historical.
Which is weird. It is a series that I should love, but
I didn't like the first book.
I had problems with the end. I think it was assault related stuff.
If you have if you are unable to watch shows that have depictions of sexual assault, Outlander is not the show for you. Like literally every main plot point, it kind of piggybacks on that. And I really hate that about it. I kind of still watch it, but I've had many conversations with people about how that's lazy writing. And I don't know. Speaking of other series, though, you were just talking about one of the authors you really like. Are there any other series like Bridgerton that you would recommend to people who maybe liked the show or have read those books, but maybe haven't explored other in the genre?
Yeah. So let's see. Grace Burrows she's an older author. And she's got she's amazing. Like, I think when she pitched her agent, I read somewhere that she pitched her agent that she had these books, and they said, how many have you written? She's like, I've written 50 already.
Oh my God.
And so if you look at her back catalog, there are so many, but she, like, I think the Westcotts are her family that she really does. I don't know. It's not Regency, but I really love Jasmine Guillory. All of her stuff is really great. Alyssa Cole also writes amazing books that I wouldn't mind seeing adapted. She writes Reluctant Royals. So they're set in modern day stuff, but they're royals and they're really great. I'm trying to, it's the thing, you asked me this question and it's like all my Regency stuff goes out the window. I have recently gone from like Regency romance to romance-oriented lady detectives that are set in like 1930s Scotland.
That's so fun.
And so that's sort of like I've transitioned from like the straight up fluff to like there's a little mystery and like stuff in there. And so the Lady Darby series is like, I love not Regency, but World War II, but Maisie Dobbs. That entire series is really good.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, there's like 16 books. They're great. Regency-wise, I've read a lot of Grace Burrows, but I also love Courtney Milan, who I've mentioned before. So Courtney's probably my current favorite.
Okay, well, I guess we have all of our 2021 and 2022 reading lists taken care of. Thank you, Priya. But why don't we start moving towards a wrap up? So maybe just like final Bridgerton thoughts. If someone was saying, should I watch Bridgerton? What would you say to them?
I would say if you want something that's going to warm your heart.
And your loins. But not your butt, because those marble stairs are hard and cold.
Oh my God. But also that you can choose how much you want to overthink it. then this is a show to you. Like, you can go in and just be like, I'm just gonna watch the fluff, but then you can also look at some of like the more nuanced things they tried to do, imperfect as they were for a show that is historical fantasy. You will get something out of it. I thought it brought me so much joy in a winter of my discontent.
Yeah.
And so I support everyone watching it. So
Yeah, I think I would do the same. That's a really good way. You can watch it however you want to watch it. Like, I watched it the first time, I watched it with my husband, and he really got into it too. And he got mad if I would watch it further without him. And then the second time I was rewatching it in preparation for this podcast, taking care of Alex, and my mom would be around and we'd watch it together. And I could be a little uncomfortable with the sex stuff, but we basically just made fun of them with the sex stuff. But I enjoyed it maybe even more the second time, because then I could start paying attention to kind of those nuances and things that maybe I had missed the first time. I would tell people to watch it. I don't think there's too much problematic stuff. There's the issue with the Daphne Simon scene is kind of the only caveat I would really give. And that is not anywhere near in the realm of, say, Outlander, which we just talked about, which is just loaded with rape and horrible things happening to all the characters.
Yeah.
This was, I don't know, I just think it's fun. What can I say? I just thought it was fun. It's got bright costumes. It's got crazy British people also boning everywhere. Like, what's
Julie
not to like?
Andrews. We didn't even
Julie
talk about Julie Andrews. I lost my mind.
Having a great time. A great time. Clearly. She's loving it. She's the Gossip Girl.
She's so great.
So good. What would you say, Kristen?
The first time I watched Bridgerton, as you know, Maggie, like, I was in for like 4 episodes and then I was so out. I was so stressed out with it. I was frustrated by it. I felt that the pace dragged when they went to Cliveden. I was unhappy just watching all the sex scenes because I wasn't emotionally engaged with the characters. And I was like, I guess I need to read sex on the page to get like to enjoy it somehow.
I think
but
you
with
told me that it was repetitive.
Yeah, it felt repetitive because it was just because I didn't care, I guess. And the second time I watched it, all those problems went away. I think I was in control because I knew where the story was going. And so I could just sit back and not worry about these characters, not be like neurotic and just enjoy a show for once. And it was delightful. And the only thing that continues to piss me off is how Daphne and Simon will be having a conversation and then just go right to P&V with no foreplay. We can't be like, think
for a second, like P&V. Yeah.
Stop. Let me do the clappy hands. Stop portraying tentative sex without foreplay. It's giving everybody unrealistic expectations of their bodies.
Back then, they kind of have lube back then, right?
Well, not when you're just having a conversation between Daphne and Simon, and then they're like, "Oh, what the hell? We love each other," and then they just start like pumping. Like, no, that's not how this works.
Well, remember, she is like 20 years old.
I don't care. It's damn it, like it's just we can't be portraying that. Let's stop portraying this.
Yeah, the one friend of mine who had a problem with the sex scene said that part frustrated her because for women, that's really important. And if this is a women-forward sex-related show, the fact that they didn't do that.
This does not bother me because, again, it's part of the fantasy. And
yeah,
also,
but no.
How much time do we have? Like, I don't want to sit there for 5 minutes.
I know. You make a valid point. You make a very valid point. But I think a lot of women are frustrated with themselves that their bodies don't do that. It makes them feel like they're not sexy enough or that their romances aren't romantic enough. And that's not the case. But
it's the same show that tries to tell you that it's sexy to like have sex on your back on a marble temple in the freezing rain.
Yeah, on a ladder. Yeah, like
it's all a fantasy. Did you think you love that scene?
No.
Okay, yeah.
No, I love how you just described
but
that.
But that's what it is. I'm like, that bitch is cold. And that thing is that
I was like, the least
so hard on her back.
And position was so important in the show because in order for him to pull out, like
exactly.
Top, but like if you were a gentleman, you would have been on the bottom.
Right. But they couldn't do that yet because again, like you were saying, they have to save that for like the consent scene.
I will say, and foreshadowing. The bees. If you have read the book, the bees at the end, they were so subtle, but there was something that happened in the second season. I cannot talk about it, but it is one of my favorite scenes of ridiculous Julia Quinn scenes in book 2 that the bees I was just like,
I thought they were making like a birds and the bees and like springtime renewal thing, but I guess there's
like a backstory and then a front story about it. Like I just like stuff that's in flashbacks and stuff that Kristen knows what I'm talking about. And
so Kevin he did notice the bees and he's like, is there supposed to be some special significance? And so I told him, and he was like, I just assumed it was part of the My Girl cinematic universe.
It was the shitty thing that happens to Benedict that he gets stung by a bee.
Anyway. And I am going to conclude by saying to everyone out there, every Bridgerton fan out there, if you have not seen a YouTube video by the creator Kieran Hodgson.
Oh my God. Yeah. You sent this to me, didn't you?
He does a comedy series called Bad TV Impressions, and he has a lot of them. But the bad TV impression for Bridgerton season 1 is a triumph of comedy. And my husband and I quote the lines in it to each other all the time.
We can share that. I'll share that link on.
Yes.
I'm writing it down so I don't forget it.
Also share the TikTok Bridgerton musical stuff. I've seen parts of that, and that is also brilliant.
I have to write these down because I promise to share things all the time, and then I go into my podcast fugue where I don't remember what we talked about. That's a real thing, by the way. I don't know if you guys experience that, but I don't remember what happened when we record.
I know, right? I will. I love sharing the bad TV impression whenever I can. And, no spoilers, but like he does a number of impressions of various Bridgertons. And my favorite is Eloise. Like, why must a woman impress with her big eyes? Why not with a big book she has written? So you will love it.
Thank you to Priya for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
And Priya, this is so amazing.
For me, I mean, I've talked more about sex in a public place in this podcast than I ever have. So,
well, it's not really public. No one can see you.
I used to have this conversation with my friends, and like now everyone gets to hear me talk about it.
Well, this is the great thing about the internet. Everyone's just a friend you haven't met yet.
Exactly. But thank you for having me on here. I love talking to the two of you.
Oh, we love talking to you. I'm so thrilled you came back on.
We can have you back. Kristen, do we need to go to the wheat sheath today?
Yes. Okay, we do, because there's one person I haven't even written back to yet, which I will pull up their message. We got a really sweet message from Stormhouse Publishing, EM. It's Stormhouse Publishing. An author from the Jaff space who listened to our podcast with Bianca and said, thank you for talking about these issues of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion in the Jane Austen fandom. And she was saying it's hard to be on social media and to say the things that you really think and feel about social issues and still be a creator who is trying to sell their products. And I think we all are feeling that right now. So I just wanted to sympathize about the way the world is and the fact that DEI issues are even issues that are controversial in any way, which saddens me, so I'm sorry you're going through that, Yum, and thank you for dropping us a note. Maggie, can you think of anyone else?
Oh, I don't know. I can't even remember what I did yesterday.
No. Yeah.
Things have been pretty light on the mail, which is fine. I think that everyone's kind of focused on trying to
No, it's fine for me too. I mean, personally, it's just been a lot. This summer has been a lot. So, it's totally fine. And
this summer's been a lot for everyone. If you did send us a note and we haven't mentioned it, or we neglected to get back to you, you have our apologies. Obviously there's a lot going on for everyone right now. We so appreciate you reaching out. Like, I really can't tell you how nice it is when we get
it's just to hear from people message. And cool. And
everyone, enjoy Bridgerton. Looking forward to season 2. I did hear they had to pause filming for one day because a crew member tested positive for COVID. So they took a break, but then they're back on. So everything's back and humming along. So hopefully, do we know anything about release date for that?
I feel like they might make it a Christmas event.
You think this year?
I honestly think that, like, if they can get them done fast enough, like it's June, there's not a lot of special effects that I can tell. Maybe they're trying to do Christmas releases because it did so well at Christmas.
And
yeah, it did.
At home, it's cold, it's dark.
Yeah.
My family will probably want to come over this year because of the baby and everyone's vaccinated, but I'll be like, get out. I have to watch Bridgerton.
This year for Christmas.
I do draw the line at watching Bridgerton with my dad. That is not how. That'd be weird. All right. Well, hopefully we'll all be in a place where we're able to watch it and enjoy it with family.
Yes, that's our wish for everyone. to watch awkwardly sexy things with their family at Christmas.
Yes. That's my brand right there. All right, Priya, I don't know if you know our tagline, what we say when we leave. So why don't I just have Kristen say it? Kristen, what do we say?
We have delighted you long enough.
Bye.
Bye.